This is actually a machine. It's called the machine that won World War II because this
Huh.
machine can spit out parts faster than it's one of the fastest machines around. It's still got the exact same design, almost the same design as it did during World War II. They're still using them. They say it won World War II because the Germans, they had like only one spindle on their
Yeah.
lathes,
Yeah.
and this is 5 spindles. This can spit out a part in 3 seconds.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our #1 priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS Podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm Elevate IQ. Buying a machine is an expensive investment that most companies would think twice before thinking about replacing. Also, replacements decisions would be complex as various factors need to be considered, including buy versus maintain and the overall cost of ownership for both of these decisions, including taxes. If you are thinking of replacing, machinery dealers could not only help you maintain, but might be able to sell at the carrying cost on your balance sheet, if not for profit. In today's episode, our guest Noah Graff shares his insights about the business model of machinery dealers. He also talks about best practices of working with a machinery dealer. Finally, he compares different machines and how a different strategy might be required for each of these cases. Let me introduce Noah to you. Noah calls himself a treasure hunter and buy and sell used machine tools around the world, specifically for the precision machining industry. He also runs a website and podcast dedicated to the precision machining industry. With that, let's get to the conversation. Hey Noah, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. This is so fun to get to be on somebody else's podcast for a change.
And this is my fun part as well. Whenever I host any podcast host, it's always so much fun just because they are going to have so many stories that they could share from their guests as well as from their industries. So just to kick things off, do you want to start with your personal story and current focus for the people who might not know you, Noah?
Absolutely. So I'll give you a little bit of like the current and then how I got there, just to give you a little context.
Of course.
So I am a machinery dealer.
Hey.
I a used machinery dealer, which is actually important to specify.
Yeah.
I often refer to myself as a treasure hunter.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more of a romantic way of looking at things versus I go into old shops and find dirty, oily crap that people think they don't want, and then I go and buy it and sell it for more money. It's a lot more interesting than that, and it's a problem-solving business. It's a hunt to find value where somebody else overlooks value. The machines that we specialize in, it's a category of manufacturing called precision machining.
Yeah.
And this is specifically, it's generally round turned parts made on machines called screw machines, specifically either CNC Swiss style screw machines or multi-spindle screw machines, which is actually our company's specialty. Multi-spindles, it's like 6 lathes all next to each other working together in one machine. And you can just spit out parts like by hundreds of thousands. If you need to make hundreds of thousands of parts, millions of parts, you buy a multi-spindle screw machine. And the interesting thing about these machines is, like, the mechanical machines, the not CNC machines, are still really viable today. And when we're buying a multi-spindle screw machine, a mechanical screw machine, like the 1980s, that's considered modern. That's like a a newish year in screw machine years. So some of these machines we'll be buying and selling are all the way back to the 50s. Um, so it's an interesting combination of machines from 50s, 60s, 70s,
Yeah.
along with machines that were made. We sold a machine from 2020 this year. So we are a family company. My
Yeah.
grandfather started this company back in, God, about 80 years ago.
Yeah.
And then my father and my uncle eventually went into the business, and I majored in film in college,
Yeah.
and I had worked here in the summer. It always seemed intriguing, seemed like a good opportunity, but I kind of wanted to make films and go along that path.
Yeah.
And I lived in Italy for a little bit after school, and I came back, and I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do, sort of searching. And who my dad Lloyd, he has a journalism master's
Yeah.
from University of Michigan, and he had only a few years before started a magazine
Ah,
about the machining business. Um,
interesting.
this had always been sort of something he had wanted to do, something kind of more on the media side,
Yeah.
uh, and combined his you know, his love of the machining business with his journalism.
Yeah.
And he says he's trying to lure me in. So this is like 2005. It's
Yeah.
like right before YouTube really got going. And he's like, broadband is coming, and we'll do interviews, and we'll do interviews with all the people we're doing articles with, and we'll do educational videos. And I didn't really know I wanted to do, and so I said, "Fine, I'll try it." And
Yeah.
then things are kind of they're a journey, and so unfortunately, the video stuff, he was a little bit ahead of his time,
Yeah.
and so then I got into doing the journalism and writing and coming up with different sort of features for our magazine. It was called Today's Machining World.
Yeah.
And then eventually we took it all online, and as print was dying. And of course, right when we took it online, all of a sudden it finally turned a tiny profit.
Yeah.
And we had a lot more time because we were online and we weren't doing a lot of the same kind of really involved stories. So I was like, all right, well, why don't I try the machinery business? Why
Yeah.
don't I try the family treasure hunting business? And
Yeah.
then we'll do blogs for the magazine basically just turned into blogs, and then
Yeah.
there's industry news and various other things. And so that I started doing about 10 years ago, and then maybe in 2018 we started this podcast. And I wish I had started even earlier. Now
Yeah.
at the time I felt like I was late to the game. Now I feel like it was, you know, it always feels like that. And then later on, you look at the line and wow, other people are way further back in the line than me. My dad
Yeah.
actually had suggested I start the podcast even earlier, but at that time, when I thought of podcasts, I just thought of like Radio Lab or like This
Yeah.
American Life. I was like, I can't make anything like that. And then I started hearing ones where people were interviewing people, and I
Yeah.
thought, oh, I can do that. Obviously, it's, as you know, Sam,
Yeah.
it to do it right, it's not easy if you want to do it
It's not
right.
easy. Yep.
And 4.5 years later, 160, I think we're gonna have our 168th episode coming out this week. Here I am. We talk to people, some of the same people, uh, same kind of people that are on this show.
Yeah.
Many of our customers from Graff Pinkert are used machinery dealers. So people that are making automotive parts, aerospace parts, medical parts.
Yeah.
Um, we get their stories. And then, with our blog, it's very eclectic. We sometimes we'll just talk about sports or politics or
Yeah.
whatever we think our listener base in our industry would be interested in. So that kind of brings me to where we are right now. All right, your turn, Sam. What am I missing here?
Yeah, so I am going to unpack a lot of things from what you have mentioned. We'll go back to that. But
Great,
before we do
great.
that, we have one of the standard questions that we ask every single guest that come on the show, and that is going to be, Noah, your perspective on business growth.
That is interesting because I've been thinking a lot about that even just this last weekend. We have some customers that tell us if you're not growing, you're
Yeah,
dying. They say, well, if the stock market is growing 7%, 9% every year, then that means if you're not growing, then you're shrinking.
yep,
I don't know. It's a very interesting logic. Um, I've also talked to some other people that said that we're growing, and they were like, we're trying not to grow so fast
yeah,
because we don't want to sacrifice our values and our quality and what we're really about just for the sake of growing. Um, and growing could also it doesn't necessarily have to mean bigger, I suppose. It could just mean changing with the market to
yeah,
to to adapt. Maybe you're smaller, but you're more profitable. But so that's what I'm seeing. I guess in our industry, most people want to grow.
yeah,
Our customers are shops that could be as small as one or two people
yeah,
to shops with several hundred employees,
yeah,
and people are generally trying to, we encounter them when they're trying to build their capital equipment,
yeah,
buy more machines. Sometimes the ones that are the slickest ones, the ones that are maybe growing the most,
yeah,
they're the ones that have the machines they want to get rid of.
yeah, yeah,
um I have some customers, yeah, we've only bought machines from them, we've never actually sold machines to them. Growth, I think that our industry, it's definitely precision machining. I think it really is a growth industry in the United States. I think
yeah,
it really is doing really well. Everybody talks about the same things constantly that are really important. Can't get enough young people, can't get enough people that want to work in shops. And obviously, that stuff is really important for growth for the industry and for the companies in general.
yeah. Very interesting perspective, and I completely agree that when you look at growth, it has to be based on the context as well as based on your own unique situation. So when you talk about growth, just plain revenue, I don't think that is going to be applicable for everybody. So you need to look at your own business and figure out what is growth for you. So, okay, so let's go back to some of the commentary. And before we unpack a lot, let's get some of the dates in order because I don't know if our listeners will be able to follow along. So, you mentioned that your grandfather started the machine dealership business 8 years ago, but then the
Eight,
blogging wasn't
80
80
years
years
ago.
ago. Okay, 80, right? Okay, okay. So now that makes a lot of sense. That's what I was thinking. Okay, 8 years ago, grandfather, how does that work? Okay, good. So let's go back to some of the comments where you said, what, these businesses, especially the ones that are growing really fast, they want to get rid of their machines. So describe their thought process in terms of what is going on in their mind. What are they looking at? Also, contrast that with your perspective. You mentioned that you are a treasure hunter, and every CFO out there, they all want to be treasure hunters, right? But then they are also trying to balance whether it is going to be a buy versus build decision, because sometimes when you
Every
are
CFO wants to be a treasure hunter.
oh
What do you mean by that?
because they are the ones who are trying to find money in your balance sheet as well as income statements.
Mm,
So they are definitely of the mindset of treasure hunting, but it's always going to be
yeah.
okay. They do slightly more sophisticated financial analysis before they identify, okay, whether I need to get rid of this machine or shall I buy new machine, right? So those decisions go
All right.
through very sophisticated financial cycle that they are doing. But you are thinking that, what, they don't really understand machines. And I can figure out in
Well,
treasure from my oily machines. So tell me, what
all
are
right.
they
So
missing here?
you're bringing up some very interesting concepts to talk about. So, okay, as far as the treasure hunting from the
Yeah.
people at the companies. Okay, so there's some customers we're close to, and some of them fancy themselves as machinery dealers themselves.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, and I tell them sometimes I'm just like they'll they'll go on about this piece of equipment and they'll know 10 times more than I will about it.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, "Well, yeah, I appreciate the education." And they'll tell me, "Well, it should cost this, it should cost that." And I mean, that's one of the interesting parts of the business, not knowing what the heck something should cost. But there are certain customers we have that, yeah, they think like used machinery dealers.
Yeah.
They're constantly wanting to get the top dollar for their used equipment or trade or and then there are the others and that are just like, I want to be making parts. I want to be focusing on the manufacturing business, which is
Yeah.
how I make my money. Uh like here, you can broker this equipment for me.
Yeah.
Sometimes people will sell it for on consignment for them.
Yeah.
And sometimes we'll actually stock machines. So obviously I kind of prefer it when the people are like, yeah, you can go be a machinery dealer
Yeah.
and I'll go and make parts and we'll have that sort of relationship.
Yeah.
That said, it's also nice when some of the same people I'm discussing um, that think like machinery dealers, they're also the kind of people where you want to sell a machine to a company and you get to work with the owner of the company. And that's nice because they don't have to go to purchasing. They don't have to fly it up the flagpole or whatever.
Yeah.
They come in, they see this piece of equipment they know they want. They go, yeah, I'll take it. Um, and it's always great to be able to go to the decision maker.
Yeah. Yeah.
What else did you want to know?
Well, so you mentioned one of the term called unconsignment there, and I don't know
Oh,
how
yeah.
many people are going to be familiar with that. So describe
Sure.
the process for unconsignment. So let's say if I'm the owner, I have a bunch of machines and I am trying to figure out how to invest my time. If I were in their shoes, probably what I would do is I would be focusing on what I am really good at. And if you're a manufacturing business, your core business probably is going to be making parts. So let's say if
Rather
you're,
than calling around and yeah. So here's what we like to do.
yeah,
With a few of our closest customers,
yeah,
people that we have certain kind of relationship with, we'll sort of establish a relationship with them or we'll try to, that we're the dealer. We can make an exclusive agreement with
yeah,
that person to sell their equipment. Now, I mean, for a lot of this stuff, we have a nice specialty in this turning equipment in some of these older machines that most of the dealers won't even touch it anyways. So that's
yeah,
fine. But there's other kinds of equipment, like very modern CNC equipment, stuff that all our competitors are very interested in as well. So what we'll try to do is set up with somebody. Would you mind signing an exclusive for, say, 6 months that we can sell this machine for you? We can market it for you, and you won't let other dealers do that for you. And you'd think for a second, well, why would somebody want to do that?
yeah,
Why would they only want one person advertising the machine, right? But then you think about it, okay? Number one, if they have a prior relationship with us, they can trust us.
yeah,
Number two, uh, if I'm somebody who wants to focus on making parts, which is the whole reason I am having somebody else take care of selling my machines for me in the first place, do
yeah,
I want 6 other dealers calling me every day? I have a customer. I have a customer. I have a customer. Like, I mean, I wouldn't want that. Also, what you'll see often online is you'll see the same machine on a whole bunch of dealers' websites.
yeah,
And then to make matters worse, people will be putting price tags up on the website,
yeah,
and it's confusing for the buyers. People don't know if things still exist. Nobody knows who owns what. It's almost like you don't, and I feel like when a piece of equipment is everywhere like that, it almost devalues it. Like it's just what is it? Is it real? Is it out there? I don't know. I think if I'm somebody buying something,
yeah,
I'm gonna I'd rather see it like in one place because look, you can Google it. You're
Yeah.
going to find it in one place anyways, probably, right? Also, just certain kinds of equipment. Again, we can talk about it better than other people. And there's plenty of equipment where I am going to, admit that I'm just really not quite as savvy. And that's where it's kind of cool where we work with other dealers too. Like we just bought this milling machine, these two vertical machining centers called a Herco.
Yeah.
And we were able to sell one, but other ones, we have another one we're trying to sell. We've been talking to other dealers about it, and they have a lot more customers for these machines, and
Yeah.
they can talk intelligently more about them. And so we'll come to them and they'll go and bring it to their customers. Or often I'll put a machine, like there's various websites,
Yeah.
like there's one called machinetools.com, and you
Yeah.
can put a bulletin out there. I'm looking for, say, a Star SR32.
Yeah.
And this is a Swiss machine. It's a very in-demand machine right now.
Yeah.
So I could put it out there, and then all these other dealers in the network, they'll see it, and they'll go, "Oh, all right. If I ever see that, I should call Noah at Graff Pinkert."
Yeah.
And what I like to do is, even when I'm not exactly looking for that machine, even that day, because I know I'll have a lot of customers for it, I'll
Right.
just keep putting like the bulletins out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it'll be in people's heads. It'll be in all these other dealers' heads. Oh, Graff. Whenever you find a Swiss machine, you should call Graff Pinkert
Yeah.
because they're always looking for it. So they see that, and then they call us and they bring it to us, and we work together. And the next time I find a Haas machining center,
Yeah.
and then I call them. So the dealer network's really important, and it's nice when you have people who do different things than you as well. A lot of dealers are all over the place. They do everything.
Yeah.
We kind of dabble with various things, and we try to, but we try to specialize a little bit more because, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's partly not innovating, but it's also partly if you stay within this niche, then you become known for the niche, and you can focus on this. And sometimes, I mean, you ever feel like it's the whole thing about when you have
Yeah.
limitations, sometimes you can do more than when you're trying to cast a net for everything out there.
Yeah.
If you know what you're looking for, if you know what your customers are wanting, then and it's more limited, maybe it actually helps.
Yeah, completely agree. And I don't know. I think you made one of the comment that Swiss machines are going to be in higher demand. So, what is driving that demand overall? Are there any specific industries that are looking to get these machines? Is there
Absolutely.
any specific, efficiency optimization that companies can get by removing their legacy machines with Swiss? And my understanding, since you mentioned the precision parts, this is going to be really when you are trying to build something for aerospace, medical. This is where you are probably going to get quality, and that's why these machines are in higher demand, I
Right.
believe, right?
Yeah, for several reasons. I mean, they're great for lots of things. Medical work,
Yeah,
Swiss is really where it's at.
yeah,
A lot of the parts are made on Swiss machines. People can say they like it, they can
yeah.
say they don't like it, but firearms business, ammunition business,
Huh.
that's been a huge part of Graff Pinkert's business this year. A lot of those people use Swiss machines.
Yeah,
They're making bullets, bullet casings, they're making parts for their AR machines, and many people are actually I have a good customer, and they say they're in the shoot 'em up, sew 'em up business because
yeah,
a lot of these machines can make the same machine can make the same parts for medical devices and for gun parts. That said, yes, it seems like it's an in-demand machine type of machine, because the parts are really precise. You can run these machines lights out.
yeah,
Uh, you can just leave them unattended, if you know what you're doing. And they're sort of like, for a medium volume, you need 10,000 parts for like 10,000 parts a month. I think you could do that on
yeah,
a Swiss. And it's also, this year we've seen quite a few startups. They'll buy a Swiss machine for their garage. And because it's a machine, again, that like one person could run,
Yeah.
and you could run it unattended. So that's why we're seeing a lot of growth in that. Do you think
Yeah.
people need that explained, or do you think people know the CNC Swiss machines versus the mills and your
For the most part, I think, the manufacturers that are going to be there, they probably would know. And we have
Okay,
done some
good.
episodes where, we have discussed the CNC machines versus the slightly more legacy machines, I would
But
say.
but I'll
Um,
tell you,
yeah,
I mean, not to interrupt you, but I mean, look, Swiss has been a good business, but the better business for us this year, or at least as good, has been like dirty, older screw machines that are
yeah,
from, you know, 60s, 70s, 80s, because these are the machines that some people just don't want, and they're the kind of machines that not other, other dealers aren't going to be trying to get them. Um, it's sort of this people see them as their dreck, and they don't want to scrap it. And
yeah.
so they're willing to sell that at a decent price to us, and we can repair it a little bit, and then we can make a decent margin. And some of these machines we're selling to Mexico, or South America. But this has actually been a really good year. There's a machine, it's called a Davenport, which is an
Yeah.
interesting machine. It's a
Yeah.
5 spindle machine, 3/4 inch diameter. For most of them are 3/4 inch. And this is actually a machine. It's called the machine that won World War II, because this
Huh.
machine can spit out parts faster than it's one of the fastest machines around. It's still got the exact same design, almost the same design as it did during World War II.
Huh.
Um, and they're still using them. They say it won World War II because the Germans, they had like only one spindle on their
Yeah.
lathes,
Yeah.
and this is 5 spindles. This can spit out a part in 3 seconds.
Hmm.
So believe it or not, yeah, I mean we went years without selling one of these machines, and then all of a sudden this year we've sold a lot of them. We sold a lot of them. So yeah, so I just thought I'd add that Davenport machines, Acme machines.
Yeah.
That we like to say that the machines that you do the best on are the dirty ones.
Interesting.
If the
So that's
machine
a
looks too nice
yeah.
and it's too new and
Yeah.
everybody knows that it's good, then you're really not gonna do very well. It's the stuff that looks crap
Yeah.
but really isn't.
Yeah.
That's the real treasure.
Yeah, so very interesting. And by the way, there is another interesting perspective there that I do know whether that is a factor or not. So you mentioned that you are shipping these machines to either Mexico or South America. And
Mhm.
I don't know if they are going to have number one access to the newer machines. So for them, whatever is probably trash for
Mhm.
you, for them, it's probably a treasure, right? So that could
Part
be
of that.
a factor as well. And I don't know, I mean, see, if you look at this more from the supply chain perspective, the supply chain has been a challenge in general in the recent times. The cost of container has been very high, and you are shipping this to Mexico. And I don't know, and I don't know how easy it is to ship these machines to those locations. My understanding is going to be that these machines are really large overall. So, and I don't know if they can be
Well,
completely.
they're not that big. They're not Most of them aren't that big. You can fit a few of these. Often you can fit a couple of these machines in a 40-foot container.
Huh.
They really range. But Mexico, it's easy to ship to Mexico. In Mexico, they have a lot of talent there. A lot of people who are willing to run these older machines that
Yeah.
aren't here in the United States anymore. The people just don't have any people that want to run dirty, oily mechanical machines.
Right.
We've sold some Swiss machines into South America, into Brazil. We've got a really good contact there who handles that, because that really does have a lot of ins and outs. And I don't know how these people in Brazil do it. I mean, it's incredible. When you sell a used machine to Brazil, a company there has to pay 30% on top, 33% on top tax of what they paid
Interesting.
for it. I'm sorry, maybe so we were talking about, yeah, those other markets. Yeah, I mean, they're growing because in Mexico, labor is cheaper. I
Yeah.
just did the last podcast I did was an interview with a guy with a manufacturing shop in Mexico.
Right.
And he was telling me, like a machinist makes the equivalent of the company's expense is about $1,000 a month for
Huh.
for a machinist, $1,000 US. A technician is maybe 1.5, 2,000. Somebody more skilled, and then a management person is 5,000 per month. But what's really weird and interesting is that a doctor in Mexico makes about $1,000 a month.
Really?
So you could make more money.
Do they have a degree?
Yeah, you could. Now the degree is inexpensive to get.
Yeah.
But you could make 5 times more money as a manager at a manufacturing company than you could as a doctor.
Interesting.
Now, of course, these are averages, but I thought it was very interesting.
That's fascinating. Yeah, that's fascinating. So let's look at the taxes. And you mentioned that 33% you have to pay on top of your used
the VAT,
machinery.
yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, see, you are talking about $1,000 right now. In my opinion, once they have introduced VAT, and that's very recent introduction overall from the e-invoicing perspective in Mexico and Brazil, and obviously, we are in the ERP space, so we track all of that.
Actually, I'm not sure if it's VAT. I'm not good with the VATs. Do you get VAT money back?
No. So the way and I don't know whether you understand the HST in Canada or not, US probably does not have that. And that's why you don't understand that. So typically the way it works is whatever you are, let's say, going to be supplying to your customers, you are going to be charging HST, VAT on that, and each of the category of the products and services. Sometimes the services are going to be exempt, sometimes they are charged as well, depending upon the country and the regulation. So each of the SKU that you are going to have as part of your service offering, when you sell that, you are supposed to be charging a specific tax that could be VAT. Sometimes there are going to be 2 or 3 layers of taxes. Sometimes you might have the federal level tax, then you might have the province or state level tax, and then you might have other layers as well in that. Again, depending upon the country as well as the regulation. So when you sell to your customer, that's when you are going to be charging your HST or VAT. But then when you are buying stuff, okay, so you are paying on that. So the way it works is you can literally compute, okay, how much HST did you collect, and then how much HST or VAT did you pay, and your obligation is going to be really whatever is going to be difference of that. So that's how complex the HST or VAT computation can get. So here, in this particular case, they are paying 33%, but they might not end up paying 33% by the end of the year because they may have paid something when they, let's say, supply to their customers, right? So to your question,
I don't know. I don't know. I think they are taxed 33%, which is incredible.
Right, but you get part of it. You don't get 33. So your question was, do you get it back? The answer is you might get part of it depending upon how much HST you are paying back and forth, but you don't.
What is HSD? What does HSD stand for?
Okay, so I don't really remember the acronym.
Well, tell me what it means exactly, because this
HST
is something I really should know. But what
HST is really VAT. It's the same thing. See, it's supposed to be value-added tax. The way you have value-added, and here I think the harmonized is H there. Harmonized probably standard tax or something like that. That's what is HST. But the whole idea is you are paying on either product or service that you might be supplying to any of the provinces, states, or at the federal level. So that's the whole concept. But all of these countries, when you look at Mexico, they are trying to eradicate corruption. India is trying to eradicate corruption, and that's why they have launched this whole process of e-invoicing. Mexico is notorious the way Mexico works. What they are trying to do is they want you to submit every single invoice that you are going to process to government. So you don't necessarily file the taxes towards the end of the year. They are simply going to be submitting each of the invoices. So that's how complex it gets overall from the admin perspective. So that's probably the reason why they are charging 33%. Now, to go back to your comment, on the used machinery, you are claiming that they are paying 33%. What about new machinery? Do they not pay as much? My understanding is going to be, if used is going to be so expensive from the taxation as well as shipping perspective, Can they not get a new machinery right there?
I'm trying to think. I wish I had my guy right here, and he could tell me. I think that the new machines over there are really expensive as well. I think they're high. They're very marked up. I think also it's also a good place for us to sell used machines because people are they're a little less fussy
Yeah,
about everything being perfect in a certain way, and people will be people are a little bit more open to used machines because even with the 33% tax,
yeah,
like we've sold some Swiss machines there and it was still worth it for them to buy it. Even after all the shipping
yeah,
and, cuz the shipping you're probably costing it's going to cost, I don't know, 5 grand, 6,
yeah,
7 grand. And then there's all kinds of other I don't even know what goes on there, but in certain countries somebody gets paid to look at the machine and give it
yeah,
a good review, and somebody gets paid, it's my friend, my who I work with, he got penalized when the machine went into the country just recently when it had the wrong weight.
hmm,
I said he was like, make sure the next time you send a machine, it has, we have to weigh it. And we
yeah,
were like, well, why don't we just, kind of overestimate, make sure we say it's heavier just in case. Says no, there's that bad that it could be lighter, and they'll still fine me. It's
yeah,
crazy. It's a
yeah. It's
crazy thing, and which is why we have good partners. I've got like my index CNC multi-spindle guy in Germany. I've
yeah,
got my Tornos guy in the United States. I've got my Brazilian guy. I've got my robot guy here. I've got it's cool when you think about all the network you have. Oh,
yeah.
we got this machine. I'm going to call him. He may not want it, but he'll tell me what's up. That's part of the whole treasure hunting thing that you get after years of being around.
Right, amazing. So this has been great. Do you have any last minute closing thought or advice for our listeners, Noah?
Man, I totally should have rehearsed that because
You don't have a
I
speech
always
ready?
ask that on our podcast. First, I just want to say, Sam, this was just so much fun. It's really great to be on your show, and it's like when you travel to some other country, you go to learn about another culture, and then the more you learn, the more you're there, the more you learn about your own culture, right?
Exactly, exactly.
So, like, this is great for me being interviewed by you because then I learn about what it's like for the people I'm talking to,
Yeah,
and shoot, what is what's going through their mind when I ask them this question. And so it's just really been enjoyable, and I love that you are into getting people's stories because that's really what I'm all about as well. I don't know, do you feel like with your podcast that you're kind of divided between wanting to get the story, but also like wanting to have this point in mind. Like today, I want to talk about X and to teach people X. And you're like, what do I want to focus more on? Do you find that, or are you just kind of like, I'm just talking to a machinery dealer and we're gonna go with it and it's gonna be awesome because we're gonna just let it happen? Versus kind of I think maybe that was my way, and maybe now I'm like putting a lot of pressure on myself of like I want to be able to tell everybody this show is about X. It's an interesting like yin and yang in my
yeah,
mind. Like
yeah,
the best is when it all just kind of like comes out and it's perfect and you
yeah,
have it either way.
yeah.
Anyways, thank you for having me on the show. I learned from you and from your questions, and you really gave me some things to think about. And if anybody wants to, you know, uh, check out my show, it's called Swarfcast, and our publication is Today's Machining World. And anyways, I can't wait to hear how this sounds. I'm going to be honest with people on our show. It's somewhat edited with we get some of the ums out, and I feel like I'm the one that gets edited more because I'm like "Bleh." So it'll be interesting to hear me stammering like this. But Thank you.
No, you are not stammering at all. And this was a powerful episode overall. Just to answer your question, I think, we like to balance both in terms of having a little theme, but at the same time, you also want to capture the story. My personal takeaway from this conversation is going to be anytime when you are looking at any financial asset, whether it is going to be a used machine or something else, make sure you do the due diligence as well as ask experts because your time is limited. On that note, Noah, I really want to thank you for your time. This has been a powerful episode.
Thank you. I thought it was powerful. Have a great day. Thank you.
You too. Thank you. I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up learnings from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you want to learn more about Noah, head over to graffpinkert.com. It's GRAFFPINKERT.com. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. If anything in this podcast resonated with you and your business, you might want to check other related episodes, including the interview with Richard Labovitz, who shares his insights into procurement prioritization and its impact on scheduling and inventory. Also, the interview with Dave Roth, who shares his insights into the importance of condition monitoring for your critical equipment, why that is important for Industry 4.0 initiatives. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to get you on the next episode of the WBS podcast.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.